You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to announce your strength. And you don't need validation to be powerful. The strongest people in the room are rarely the loudest. They don't argue. They don't react. They don't perform confidence. They radiate it through discipline, restraint, and silence. This audiobook will teach you how to build mental strength so solid that people feel it instantly, without you saying a single word. Because real power is quiet. And once you understand that, everything changes. Chapter 1. Stop explaining yourself. Stop explaining. Right now. Every unnecessary explanation is a quiet confession of doubt. Not doubt in your decision, but doubt in yourself. You tell yourself you're being polite. You tell yourself you're being clear. You tell yourself you're just trying to avoid conflict. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is this. You are negotiating your authority with people who did not earn a vote. And you don't need their permission. That's the key. Over-explaining is insecurity wearing good manners. It sounds reasonable. It sounds mature. But underneath it, there is fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of being disliked. You have a choice. You can lead your life from discipline or from emotional approval seeking. Most people explain because they want comfort. They want agreement. They want reassurance that they are allowed to do what they already decided to do. But mentally strong people don't operate like that. They act first. They let results speak. And if explanations ever come, they come last or not at all. You don't owe explanations for your discipline. Say it again. Slowly. I do not owe explanations for my discipline. That sentence alone will make weak people uncomfortable. Good. That's how you know it's working. Here's the truth most people never learn. The more you explain, the less credible you become. Why? Because explanations signal uncertainty. They signal that your decision is still open for debate. They signal that if someone pushes hard enough, you might fold. And the world is full of people who sense hesitation like blood in the water. You explain your schedule. You explain your boundaries. You explain your goals. You explain why you can't attend, can't help, can't stay, can't engage. Every explanation invites negotiation. You say, I can't because, and now you've opened the door. Now they question the reason. Now they judge whether it's good enough. Now you're defending yourself instead of directing yourself. That's the flaw. It's not about communication. It's about discipline. You have a choice. You can say less or you can keep leaking authority. Mentally strong people understand something simple. Clarity does not require justification. I won't be doing that. That doesn't work for me. I've decided otherwise. Period. No apology tour. No backstory. No emotional footnotes. When you explain less, people may push back at first. That's normal. They were comfortable when you were easy to manipulate. They were comfortable when your decisions came with disclaimers. Your silence disrupts that comfort. And that's the point. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You need to be respected by yourself. That's the key. Respect begins internally. And internal respect grows when your actions align with your discipline, not with other people's expectations. Let's get practical. Starting today, notice how often you explain when no explanation is required. Notice it at work. Notice it with family. Notice it with friends. Notice it in messages, emails, conversations. You'll see it everywhere. You'll hear yourself adding extra sentences, softening your decisions, padding your boundaries. That's the moment of choice. Pause. Ask yourself one question. Am I explaining for clarity or for approval? Be honest. If it's approval, stop talking. That's the discipline. You don't need their permission to choose what strengthens you. You don't need their permission to protect your time. You don't need their permission to say no. Strong people don't fear being disliked. They fear becoming weak through compromise. And make no mistake, every unnecessary explanation is a compromise. You're trading strength for comfort. And comfort is expensive. Costs confidence. Costs credibility. Costs presence. When you explain less, something powerful happens. Your words gain weight. Your decisions feel final. Your presence becomes grounded. People may not like it, but they will feel it. And feeling is stronger than understanding. You have a choice. You can keep narrating your life, or you can start living it quietly. Here's another truth. Results silence questions faster than explanations ever will. You don't need to justify your routine when your results are visible. You don't need to defend your focus when your progress is obvious. You don't need to argue for your boundaries when your life is stable. That's why mentally strong people invest in action, not argument. They don't convince. They demonstrate. They don't announce discipline. They apply it. And they don't explain themselves to people who haven't earned proximity. Say it again. I do not owe explanations for my discipline. This isn't about being rude. It's about being rooted. Rooted people don't sway in every conversation. They don't bend under social pressure. They don't shrink to be palatable. They stand still. And stillness confuses people who rely on noise. Expect resistance. Expect questions. Expect subtle guilt tactics. That's not like you. You've changed. Why are you being distant? These are not concerns. They are withdrawals from an old version of you that no longer exists. You don't need to respond to withdrawals. You move forward. That's the discipline. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim energy. Mental energy. Emotional energy. Focus. And that energy compounds. You speak less. You hesitate less. You doubt less. You don't need their permission. That's the key. This chapter is not asking you to disappear. It's asking you to decide. Decide when speech is necessary and when silence is stronger. Because the goal of mental strength is not to win arguments. It's to eliminate the need for them. You mastered the first discipline, withholding unnecessary explanation. Now you're ready for the next level. Because silence, when used correctly, doesn't weaken you, it sharpens you. You stopped explaining. Now let's talk about what replaces explanation. Chapter 2. Silence is a weapon when used correctly. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not passivity. Silence is not weakness. Silence is pressure. And most people can't handle it. The moment a conversation goes quiet, weak minds panic. They rush to explain. They rush to justify. They rush to fill the space with noise, any noise, just to escape discomfort. That reaction tells you everything. Because whoever rushes to speak first is usually the one losing control. You have a choice. You can fear silence or you can use it. That's the key. Silence creates psychological weight. It forces the other person to sit with uncertainty. And uncertainty exposes insecurity. Strong people understand this instinctively. They don't rush. They don't scramble. They don't leak information just to feel safe. They wait. And while they wait, the other person reveals themselves. Say it clearly. I choose silence over weakness. Again, I choose silence over weakness. Most people speak to relieve internal tension. They talk because silence feels threatening, feels like loss of control. But silence is control. When you stay quiet, you are not giving up power, you are concentrating it. Think about negotiations. The person who talks the most reveals the most. They show their priorities. They show their fears. They show where they're willing to bend. The quiet person listens. The quiet person observes. The quiet person lets the other side negotiate against themselves. That's not manipulation. That's discipline. You don't need to dominate conversations to dominate outcomes. You need restraint. You have a choice. In conflict, most people rush to defend. They interrupt. They explain. They raise their voice not to be heard, but to protect their ego. But when you stay silent under pressure, something powerful happens. The emotional momentum shifts. The other person expects resistance. They expect reaction. They expect noise. When it doesn't come, they lose footing. Silence denies them emotional fuel. And without fuel, conflict collapses. That's the key. Silence is not about avoidance. It's about timing. You don't speak when emotions are loud. You speak when clarity returns. And often, by the time clarity returns, words are no longer necessary. Let's be clear. This is not about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming selective. Mentally strong people don't respond to everything. They don't engage in every argument. They don't chase every misunderstanding. They ask one question internally. Does speaking here increase my leverage or reduce it? If it reduces it, they stay quiet. That's discipline. In relationships, silence works the same way. Over-explaining emotions creates dependency. Constant reassurance creates imbalance. Endless talking creates noise, not connection. Strong presence comes from emotional regulation, not emotional overflow. When you don't rush to explain how you feel, you communicate stability. When you don't react immediately, you communicate confidence. When you don't chase resolution, you communicate self-respect. You don't need their permission to be calm. That's the key. Notice how people respond to your silence. Some will lean in. Some will talk more. Some will grow uncomfortable. That discomfort is not your responsibility. Silence acts like a mirror. People see themselves more clearly when you stop interrupting them with noise. Weak minds interpret silence as threat. Strong minds recognize it as strength. You have a choice. You can keep reacting, or you can start controlling the pace. Control the pace and you control the outcome. Silence slows everything down. It forces moments to breathe. And in that pause, you regain authority. Here's where most people fail. They use silence emotionally instead of strategically. They go silent to punish. They go silent to withdraw. They go silent out of fear. That's not strength, that's avoidance. Weaponized silence is calm, intentional, and grounded. It's not passive-aggressive. It's not dramatic. It's neutral. Neutrality is powerful. A neutral expression, a steady tone, a measured response, or none at all. This is how you become unreadable. And unreadable people are difficult to manipulate. Say it again. I choose silence over weakness, not because you're afraid to speak, but because you're disciplined enough not to. Here's a practical rule. If you feel emotionally charged, delay your response. If you feel the urge to explain, pause. If you feel pressure to react, breathe. That pause is where strength lives. Silence creates space. Space creates clarity. Clarity creates control. Most people never experience this because they never shut up long enough to feel it. You will, because you are choosing discipline over impulse. It's not about winning conversations. It's about governing yourself. That's the key. When you speak less, your words matter more. When you respond slower, your presence feels heavier. When you remain calm, others adjust around you. This is how leaders are felt before they are heard. Not through volume, through stillness. Remember this: noise is cheap. Silence is expensive. Anyone can talk. Few can hold their ground without speaking. Be one of the few. You don't need to announce your strength. You let others discover it through your restraint. You stopped explaining yourself. Now you are learning to use silence intentionally. And this is only the beginning, because once you stop needing to be understood, once silence no longer scares you, you become internally free. And that leads us to the next discipline, the one that breaks emotional dependence completely. You mastered silence as a weapon. Now it's time to remove the final weakness. Chapter 3. Detach from the need to be understood. The need to be understood is one of the most invisible weaknesses you carry. Feels harmless. Feels reasonable. Feels human. But it keeps you emotionally dependent. Every time you want someone to get it, you hand them power. Power over your mood. Power over your confidence. Power over your direction. You have a choice. You can live from internal discipline or external understanding. That's the key. Most people don't want to be understood for clarity. They want to be understood for validation. They want confirmation that their choices are acceptable, that their discipline is justified, that their path makes sense to someone else. But mental strength does not require consensus. It requires commitment. Say it clearly: understanding is optional. Discipline is not. Again, understanding is optional. Discipline is not. Here's the truth you must accept if you want real strength. Most people will never understand you, and even if they did, it wouldn't help. They don't share your goals. They don't carry your standards. They don't feel the weight of your future. So why are you translating your life into a language they don't speak? You explain your silence. You explain your routine. You explain your boundaries. You explain your ambition. And still they misunderstand. Because strength looks strange to people who live comfortably. You have a choice. You can keep shrinking your decisions so others feel included. Or you can let misunderstanding exist without correcting it. Strong people choose the second. They don't chase clarity from the outside. They build clarity on the inside. That's the key. The need to be understood creates emotional leaks. You replay conversations in your head. You draft explanations that never get said. You feel frustrated when people don't see your intentions. All of that drains focus, and drained focus weakens discipline. It's not about being cold. It's about being independent. Independent minds don't need constant acknowledgement. They don't need applause. They don't need agreement. They move forward anyway. Most people misunderstand strength because strength doesn't look friendly. It looks quiet. It looks distant. It looks boring. It looks repetitive. Discipline has no dramatic flair. So stop trying to decorate it for others. You don't need their permission. That's the key. Let's talk about the real cost of needing to be understood. When someone questions you and you rush to explain, you hesitate. When someone doubts you and you feel the urge to defend, you soften. When someone misunderstands you and it bothers you, you adjust. That adjustment is dangerous. You begin optimizing your life for perception instead of progress. And perception changes daily. Progress compounds. You have a choice. You can be consistent or you can be light. Most people choose light. Then they wonder why they never feel solid. Here's a hard truth. If everyone understands you, you're probably not doing anything difficult. Difficult paths confuse people. Quiet discipline confuses people. Delayed gratification confuses people. Good. Let them be confused. Your job is not to be interpretable. Your job is to be effective. Say it again. Understanding is optional. Discipline is not. Mentally strong people accept misunderstanding early. They don't correct every false assumption. They don't chase every misinterpretation. They don't clarify every silence. They let time handle explanations. Time is the most ruthless translator. Results speak fluently, and results don't need subtitles. Notice this. The more secure you become internally, the less you need to be understood. Your nervous system calms. Your reactions slow. Your confidence settles. You stop explaining because there's nothing to prove. That's the shift. Needing to be understood is rooted in self-doubt. Detachment from that need is rooted in self-trust. Self-trust is quiet. You don't announce it. You don't argue for it. You live it. You have a choice. When someone misunderstands you, you can feel threatened. Or you can feel free. Free from correction. Free from defense. Free from performance. Freedom feels uncomfortable at first, because you're used to being seen. But strength doesn't need visibility. It needs consistency. Here's a practical rule. If explaining does not change the outcome, don't explain. If clarifying does not increase respect, don't clarify. If defending does not strengthen discipline, don't defend. Silence is not avoidance here. It's alignment. You align with your standards, not their opinions. That's the key. People will project. They will assume. They will label. Let them. Projection reveals more about them than you. Your responsibility is internal order. Internal order produces external stability. And stability is felt, even when misunderstood. You don't need to be understood to be effective. You don't need to be understood to be disciplined. You don't need to be understood to be strong. Say it one more time. Understanding is optional. Discipline is not. This chapter is where emotional independence begins. When you stop needing to be understood, you stop negotiating your identity. You become harder to provoke, harder to manipulate, harder to derail, because your center is no longer external. You don't react to confusion. You don't chase clarity. You let misunderstanding pass like weather, and weather always moves on. You've stopped explaining yourself. You've learned to use silence. Now you've detached from the need to be understood. This is where mental strength starts to show on your face, before you say a word. Which brings us to the next discipline. Because even silence can betray you if your expression leaks emotion. You've mastered internal detachment. Now it's time to master what you reveal without speaking. Chapter 4. Control your face. Control your life. Your face speaks before you do. Long before words form. Long before explanations begin. Long before silence has a chance to work. Your face reveals everything you haven't disciplined yet. A tightened jaw, a raised eyebrow, a forced smile, a quick glance away. These microreactions betray inner chaos. And once your inner chaos is visible, control is gone. You have a choice. You can let your emotions leak through your expression, or you can govern them. That's the key. Most people believe emotional control starts with what you say. They are wrong. It starts with what you show. Because the face is the first signal. The face is the tell. The face is the invitation for others to push, probe, or press. Mentally strong people understand this. They don't fight emotions outwardly. They neutralize them internally. Say it clearly. My face is neutral. My mind is calm. Again. My face is neutral. My mind is calm. When pressure hits, most people react instinctively. Surprise shows. Annoyance flashes. Insecurity creeps in. And the other person notices immediately. Once they notice, they adjust their behavior. They push harder. They question more. They take control. This is not accidental. People test boundaries through reactions, not words. If your face reacts, they know where the door is. You have a choice. You can be readable or you can be regulated. Regulated people are difficult to manipulate. Let's be clear. This is not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. Suppression stores emotion until it explodes. Mastery channels emotion until it dissolves. There's a difference. Emotional discipline means you feel internally, but you don't leak externally. Your calm becomes a wall, and that wall protects you. Watch how power shifts when your face doesn't change. When someone criticizes you and you remain neutral, they slow down. When someone provokes you and you don't flinch, they hesitate. When someone expects reaction and gets nothing, they lose momentum. That's the key. Your neutrality forces others to regulate themselves. Because energy seeks reflection. If you don't mirror chaos, chaos has nowhere to land. You don't need their permission to stay calm. Here's where most people fail. They think emotional control means being emotionless. Wrong. It means being intentional. You choose what shows. You choose what stays hidden. You choose when expression is earned. Mentally strong people do not give free access to their emotional state. Access is earned through trust and relevance. Everyone else gets neutrality. Say it again. My face is neutral. My mind is calm. Let's talk about pressure. Pressure exposes habits. When stress hits, your training shows. If you've never trained your expression, it will betray you. That's why this chapter matters. Start noticing your face in daily interactions. When someone challenges you, what happens? When plans change, what happens? When expectations aren't met, what happens? That flash of reaction is your signal. Not to judge yourself, but to train. Training starts small. Relax your jaw. Lower your eyebrows. Slow your breathing. These are not cosmetic tricks. They are neurological signals. The body informs the mind. Calm the face and the mind follows. That's the key. You have a choice. You can let stress advertise itself on your face. Or you can become unreadable. Unreadable people move freely. Because when others can't read your state, they can't control your pace. In negotiations, expression control is leverage. The person who reacts loses ground. The person who stays neutral holds position. In conflict, expression control is armor. Insults bounce off neutrality. Provocation starves without reaction. In life, expression control is freedom. You stop performing. You stop defending. You stop leaking. This discipline changes how people treat you. Not because you demand respect, but because you project stability. Stability is rare, and rare things are respected. Your face becomes a signal. I am not moved easily. That signal changes dynamics instantly. You don't need to say a word. Say it again. My face is neutral. My mind is calm. This will feel uncomfortable at first. You're used to expressing. You're used to signaling. You're used to reacting. Discomfort is the cost of growth. Stay with it. Over time, neutrality becomes natural. Your reactions slow. Your emotions settle faster. Your presence deepens. People will notice even if they don't understand why. They will describe you as calm, grounded, hard to read. Good. Hard to read means hard to shake. You've now locked down another leak. You stopped explaining. You mastered silence. You detached from being understood. You regulated your expression. This is what quiet strength looks like. But discipline is not a moment. It's a pattern. And the next pattern is where real authority is built. Because calm alone is not enough. You need consistency. And consistency doesn't speak loudly. It shows up. You controlled your face. Now it's time to control your habits. Chapter 5. Build authority through consistency, not volume. Authority is not claimed. It is accumulated. And most people try to skip that process by getting louder. They talk about what they're going to do. They announce discipline before they practice it. They broadcast confidence instead of building it. That kind of authority never lasts, because volume fades, but consistency compounds. You have a choice. You can be heard or you can be trusted. That's the key. Loud confidence is easy. Anyone can speak boldly for a moment. Anyone can sound certain when nothing is on the line. But consistency is expensive. Consistency requires repetition without applause, effort without witnesses, discipline without immediate reward. That's why it works. Say it clearly. I show up. I do not announce. Again. I show up. I do not announce. People don't trust speeches. They trust patterns. They watch what you do when no one is reminding you. They watch how you behave when motivation disappears. They watch whether your actions repeat or collapse. Authority is built quietly in those moments. Not in meetings. Not in conversations. Not in explanations. In repetition. You don't need their permission to be consistent. Most people confuse attention with respect. Attention is loud. Respect is silent. Attention reacts. Respect observes. Respect grows when people realize they can rely on you without reminders. That realization doesn't come from words. It comes from time. You have a choice. You can keep explaining your plans, or you can let your routine explain itself. Mentally strong people choose the second. They don't hype themselves. They don't sell discipline. They don't narrate progress. They let predictability do the work. Predictability is powerful. When people know how you operate, they stop testing you. They stop doubting you. They stop questioning your seriousness. Because seriousness shows up repeatedly. That's the key. Consistency removes the need for persuasion. You don't need to convince anyone you're focused if you show up focused every day. You don't need to argue that you're disciplined if your habits don't change under pressure. You don't need to defend your priorities if your behavior stays aligned. Volume tries to force belief. Consistency earns it. Here's where most people fail. They want authority fast. So they talk early. They promise big. They announce changes before they've stabilized them. Then life tests them. And when the pattern breaks, credibility breaks with it. It's not about ambition. It's about patience. You have a choice. You can move quietly and build something real. Or you can move loudly and burn trust repeatedly. Authority is slow by design, because slow filters out the undisciplined. Say it again. I show up. I do not announce. This applies everywhere. At work, in relationships, in personal development. People trust the person who is steady, not the one who is intense. Intensity spikes. Steadiness lasts. Calm routine beats emotional bursts every time. That's the key. Notice how consistent people rarely explain themselves. They don't need to. Their presence already answers questions. When you walk in and people expect competence from you, that's authority. When deadlines don't need reminders, that's authority. When your word is assumed to be reliable, that's authority. None of that comes from volume. It comes from repetition. Repetition trains others how to treat you. If you're inconsistent, people hesitate. If you're steady, people adjust. You don't need their permission to be reliable. Consistency also builds internal authority. This matters more than external perception. When you keep promises to yourself, your self-trust grows. When you follow through daily, your confidence stabilizes. When you stop announcing and start executing, doubt fades. Because doubt feeds on inconsistency. Discipline starves it. You have a choice. You can talk your way into temporary motivation, or you can act your way into permanent confidence. One fades. One compounds. This is where quiet strength becomes visible without words. Not through performance. Through predictability. Your life starts to feel solid. And solidity attracts respect. Say it one more time. I show up. I do not announce. This chapter locks in a critical shift. You are no longer trying to be seen. You are becoming dependable. Dependability is rare. And rare things carry weight. You've stopped explaining. You've learned to use silence. You've detached from being understood. You've controlled your expression. Now you've built consistency. You are becoming stable. But stability alone is not enough. Because pressure tests stability. And pressure reveals another weakness most people never address. Their emotions. Consistency without emotional control still leaks power. So now we go deeper. You've built authority through repetition. Now you must protect it under stress. Chapter 6. Become unreadable under pressure. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It reveals it. When pressure rises, most people leak. Their tone changes. Their posture shifts. Their emotions spill before they can stop them. And once emotions leak, control follows. If people can read your emotions, they can manipulate them. That's not theory. That's reality. You have a choice. You can be transparent or you can be protected. That's the key. Emotional opacity is not dishonesty. It is self-defense. Strong people don't advertise their internal state. They don't broadcast stress. They don't display fear, frustration, or excitement on demand. They keep it contained. Say it clearly. Nothing leaks. Everything stays inside. Again, nothing leaks. Everything stays inside. Most people think being open is strength. But openness without control is exposure. Exposure invites influence. The moment someone knows what bothers you, they know how to push you. The moment someone sees uncertainty on your face, they know when to press harder. The moment someone senses urgency, they slow you down or rush you into mistakes. Unreadable people remove that leverage. That's the advantage. You don't need their permission to protect your internal world. Under pressure, weak minds seek relief. They vent. They complain. They explain. All of that feels good in the moment. All of it costs power. Power is conserved through containment. You have a choice. When stress hits, you can discharge it outward, or you can absorb it inward and stabilize. Stability wins. Always. This chapter is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming unexploitable. You still feel pressure. You still feel tension. You still feel urgency. You just don't leak it. That's discipline. Think about high-stakes environments, negotiations, deadlines, conflict, competition. The person who shows stress loses ground. The person who stays neutral forces the other side to guess. Guessing creates hesitation. Hesitation creates mistakes. That's the key. Emotional opacity shifts the burden. Instead of you reacting, they adjust. Instead of you revealing, they speculate. Instead of you losing control, they lose certainty. You become the stable object in a chaotic room. And chaos orbits stability. Say it again. Nothing leaks. Everything stays inside. Here's where most people sabotage themselves. They confuse composure with suppression. Suppression builds pressure until it explodes. Composure channels pressure until it dissolves. The difference is training. You don't clamp down emotions violently. You slow them down. You breathe deeper. You reduce movement. You narrow expression. These are physical controls that regulate the nervous system. The body calms the mind. That's the key. Unreadable doesn't mean stiff. It means grounded. Your reactions become minimal. Your voice becomes steady. Your timing becomes deliberate. People sense that immediately. They may not know why they feel unsettled around you, but they will, because they can't find the lever. You have a choice. You can give people handles, or you can give them nothing to grab. Most people give handles freely. They show irritation when challenged. They show excitement when close to winning. They show anxiety when uncertain. All of that is data, and data is power. Mentally strong people limit data. They understand a simple rule. Information asymmetry favors the calm. If others know less about your internal state than you know about theirs, you have the advantage. This applies everywhere. At work, in relationships, in confrontation, in life decisions. When pressure hits and you stay unreadable, you gain time. Time to think. Time to choose. Time to respond instead of react. Reaction is fast and sloppy. Response is slow and precise. Precision wins. You don't need their permission to take your time. Say it again. Nothing leaks. Everything stays inside. Here's a practical discipline. When you feel pressure rising, do less, not more. reduce movement, reduce speech, reduce expression. Stillness under pressure is intimidating because it signals confidence without aggression. Aggression exposes insecurity. Stillness communicates control. Watch what happens when you stop leaking. People talk more. They reveal more. They rush. They try to fill the silence you're holding. And in doing so, they show you exactly where they stand. That's strategic advantage. Unreadable people don't guess. They observe. They don't rush decisions. They let others rush. They don't escalate emotions. They absorb them. Absorption without reaction is power. This discipline will feel unnatural at first. You are used to expressing. You are used to signaling. You are used to reacting. But growth always feels unnatural at the start. Stay with it. Over time, your baseline changes. Pressure no longer spikes you. Stress no longer controls your face. Urgency no longer hijacks your voice. You become calm by default. That calm becomes your reputation. People begin to describe you the same way. Hard to read. Steady. Unshakable. Good. Unshakable people don't need to dominate. They don't need to threaten. They don't need to explain. Their presence does the work. You've now sealed another leak. You stopped explaining. You mastered silence. You detached from being understood. You controlled your expression. You built consistency. Now you've become unreadable under pressure. This is where most people stop. But stopping here leaves one weakness untouched. Because even unreadable people can still waste energy. And wasted energy erodes discipline over time. So now we refine. You've learned to contain. Now you must learn to withdraw from noise itself. Because not every situation deserves your attention. You protected your inner world. Now it's time to choose where your energy goes. Chapter 7. Stop performing confidence. If confidence needs to be displayed, it's already unstable. Real confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture. It doesn't need an audience. Performance is compensation. And most people confuse the two. They speak louder to feel stronger. They exaggerate certainty to hide doubt. They display confidence because they don't yet possess it. You have a choice. You can perform strength or you can build it. That's the key. Performance is exhausting. It requires constant energy, constant validation, constant reaction. True confidence requires none of that. It's quiet. It's grounded. It's non-reactive. Say it clearly. I don't perform strength. I live it. Again. I don't perform strength. I live it. Look closely at people who perform confidence. They dominate conversations. They interrupt. They explain aggressively. They react quickly to any challenge. That's not confidence. That's defense. Confidence doesn't need to defend itself. It doesn't rush. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't escalate. It stays still. You don't need their permission to be grounded. Performative confidence leaks energy. Every reaction drains focus. Every display invites comparison. Every performance invites judgment. And judgment pulls you outward, away from discipline. True confidence pulls you inward. It anchors you. That's the key. Mentally strong people don't try to look confident. They prioritize being competent. Competence compounds quietly. And once competence is real, confidence becomes automatic. You don't wake up thinking about how to act. You act from habit. and habit removes doubt. You have a choice. You can impress, or you can improve. Impressing is temporary. Improving is permanent. Most people choose impressing because it's faster. Strong people choose improvement because it lasts. Here's the truth most people avoid. If you feel the urge to show confidence, you probably don't feel it yet. That's not a failure. That's feedback. Feedback telling you where discipline is missing. So instead of performing, train. Instead of speaking, repeat. Instead of asserting, execute. Execution silences insecurity. Say it again. I don't perform strength. I live it. True self-belief is invisible. You can't see it in posture alone. You can't hear it in tone alone. You feel it in consistency. It shows in how someone handles boredom. It shows in how they handle pressure. It shows in how little they need to react. Non-reactivity is confidence. When you don't rush to prove yourself, you signal that you already trust yourself. That trust is magnetic. People feel safe around it. They feel grounded around it. They feel measured around it. Because calm confidence regulates the room. Performance destabilizes it. You have a choice. You can dominate attention, or you can dominate outcomes. Dominating attention requires volume. Dominating outcomes requires discipline. Discipline doesn't look exciting. It looks repetitive. It looks boring. That's why it works. Most people quit before it compounds. Strong people stay. They don't need to tell anyone. They don't need to posture. They don't need to signal superiority. They let time do the signaling. That's the key. Stop correcting people's perceptions of you. Stop managing your image. Stop adjusting your behavior to look confident. Instead, lock in your routines. Confidence built on routine is unshakable, because it doesn't depend on mood. It doesn't depend on feedback. It doesn't depend on outcomes. It depends on adherence. Adherence to standards. Adherence to discipline. Adherence to repetition. You don't need their permission to be consistent. Performance collapses under pressure. When stakes rise, performers overreact. They tighten. They overcompensate. People who live strength stay the same. Pressure doesn't change them. It reveals them. And what it reveals is stability. Say it again. I don't perform strength. I live it. This chapter marks another shift. You are no longer trying to appear strong. You are becoming strong privately. Private strength becomes public presence. Without effort, without noise, without explanation. You stopped performing confidence. Now you are conserving energy. And that conserved energy must be protected. Because the next threat to mental strength is not insecurity, it's noise. Noise pulls you outward. Noise fragments focus. Noise invites reaction. So now we narrow. You've learned to live strength internally. Now you must remove the distractions that weaken it. Because not everything deserves engagement. You stopped performing. Now it's time to withdraw from the chaos. Chapter 8. Withdraw energy from noise. Noise is not accidental. It is designed. Arguments, gossip, drama, endless opinions. All of it exists to pull your attention outward. And whatever pulls your attention controls your energy. Most people are not tired because they work too hard. They're tired because they engage too much. You have a choice. You can spend your energy everywhere or you can protect it. That's the key. Noise feels urgent, feels emotional, feels important. But most noise produces nothing. No progress, no clarity, no strength, just depletion. Say it clearly. I protect my energy by saying less. Again, I protect my energy by saying less. Arguments are one of the most expensive forms of noise. They rarely change minds. They inflate egos. They drain focus. Most arguments are not about truth. They're about emotional release. And emotional release feels good in the moment, then leaves you empty. Strong people don't outsource their emotional regulation to debate. They regulate internally. That's the key. Gossip works the same way. Pretends to be information. Pretends to be bonding. But it trains your mind to focus on things you can't control. And whatever you focus on grows. When you feed gossip, you train your brain to seek drama. When you withdraw, you train your brain to seek stability. You have a choice. You can react to every story, or you can stay anchored in your lane. Anchored people don't drift. Noise pulls you into emotional positions you didn't choose. Outrage, judgment, comparison, all of it fragments your attention. Fragmented attention weakens discipline. That's the danger. Silence is not passivity. Silence is selective engagement. Mentally strong people are highly selective. They don't respond to everything. They don't comment on everything. They don't care about everything. Caring is expensive. Spend it where it compounds. Say it again. I protect my energy by saying less. Notice how noise escalates. One comment invites another. One reaction invites response. One opinion invites opposition. Before you know it, you're emotionally invested in something irrelevant. And relevance is the filter. Ask yourself this before engaging. Will this matter in a week? If the answer is no, withdraw. You don't need their permission to disengage. Here's a hard truth. People who live in noise feel busy but go nowhere. They are always reacting, always commenting, always involved, and always exhausted. Strong people feel calm because they choose less. Less engagement, less reaction, less explanation, less noise. That's the key. This applies digitally and physically. Online arguments drain you. Group chats drain you. Workplace gossip drains you. None of it builds strength. All of it steals time. When you withdraw energy from noise, something shifts. Your mind slows down. Your emotions stabilize. Your focus sharpens. You begin hearing your own thoughts again. And that's dangerous in a good way, because self-directed people are hard to control. Noise exists to distract. Silence restores direction. You have a choice. You can stay entertained, or you can stay disciplined. Entertainment consumes energy. Discipline compounds it. This doesn't mean isolation. It means intentional presence. You choose when to engage. You choose when to speak. You choose when to stay silent. That choice is power. Say it again. I protect my energy by saying less. Watch what happens when you stop feeding noise. Arguments fade. Drama bypasses you. People stop pulling you into emotional messes. Not because you told them to, because you stopped responding. Response is reinforcement. Remove reinforcement and noise starves. This discipline makes you lighter. You carry less emotional residue, less frustration, less mental clutter. And that lightness creates space. Space for focus. Space for consistency. Space for discipline. You've now learned to withdraw. You stopped explaining. You used silence. You detached from being understood. You controlled your expression. You built consistency. You became unreadable. You stopped performing. You withdrew from noise. Your inner world is now protected. But protection is not enough. Because strength is not just about avoiding weakness. It's about replacing it with structure. And structure requires something most people avoid. Routine without emotion. So now we go deeper. You've withdrawn energy from noise. Now you must anchor that energy into action. Because discipline, not motivation, sustains strength. Chapter 9. Let discipline replace motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It arrives loudly, feels powerful, and it disappears without warning. Discipline does not. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't ask for energy. It doesn't wait for the right mood. It moves anyway. You have a choice. You can wait to feel ready, or you can act regardless. That's the key. Most people build their lives around motivation. They act when they feel inspired. They stop when they feel tired. They pause when doubt shows up. And then they wonder why nothing compounds. Motivation creates bursts. Discipline creates systems. Systems win. Say it clearly. I act without needing to feel ready. Again. I act without needing to feel ready. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Emotions fluctuate. Structures hold. When emotions lead, consistency collapses. When discipline leads, emotions fall in line. That's the shift. Mentally strong people reverse the order. They don't ask, "Do I feel like it?" They ask, "Is this part of my standard?" If it is, they act. No debate. No negotiation. No mood check. You don't need their permission to act on your standards. Motivation wants comfort. Discipline demands alignment. Comfort feels good now. Alignment feels good later. Most people choose now. Strong people choose later. That's the key. Look closely at people who rely on motivation. They talk about starting. They talk about preparing. They talk about waiting for the right moment. The right moment never arrives. Discipline starts without ceremony. No hype. No announcement. No emotional surge. Just repetition. This is why discipline feels boring. Boring is stable. Stable compounds. You have a choice. You can chase feelings. Or you can build momentum. Momentum doesn't care about feelings. It builds quietly through action. Action creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence. Confidence reduces emotional resistance. Emotions follow discipline, not the other way around. Say it again. I act without needing to feel ready. Here's where most people fail. They think discipline is punishment. It's not. Discipline is freedom. Freedom from hesitation. Freedom from indecision. Freedom from emotional negotiation. When action is automatic, mental noise disappears. You stop debating yourself. You stop second-guessing. You stop draining energy on internal arguments. That energy gets redirected into execution. Execution simplifies life. Simplified life feels calm. That's the key. Discipline also protects you under pressure. When stress hits, motivated people freeze. They need encouragement. They need reassurance. Disciplined people continue. Not because they're fearless, because they're trained. Training removes choice. When choice is removed, action is guaranteed. You don't rise to motivation. You fall to discipline. Make sure your discipline is solid. You have a choice. You can design your life around feelings, or you can design it around standards. Standards don't change. Standards anchor you. Emotion-driven people drift. Standard-driven people advance. This chapter is about installing a rule. Action comes first. Emotion comes later. Not as suppression, as sequence. Once you move, emotion adjusts. Resistance fades. Momentum builds. Confidence stabilizes. Say it again. I act without needing to feel ready. This doesn't mean pushing blindly. It means removing emotional veto power. Your feelings are allowed to exist. They are not allowed to decide. Decision belongs to discipline. That's maturity. That's strength. This is where quiet power becomes permanent. Because once discipline replaces motivation, you stop starting over. You become consistent by default. You've now removed one of the biggest internal threats. No more waiting. No more hype cycles. No more emotional dependence. But there's one final shift left. Because discipline must integrate into identity. Not as something you do, but as who you are. You've learned to act without readiness. Now you must become the reference point others rely on. Calm. Stable. Unmoved. This is the final stage. You replaced motivation with discipline. Now it's time to embody it fully. Chapter 10. Become the calm reference point. Strength reaches its highest form when it no longer needs effort. When you don't push calm. You don't force control. You don't manage impressions. You are steady. And the environment adjusts around you. That's the final shift. Strong minds stabilize environments without trying to. They don't raise their voice to be heard. They don't rush to fix everything. They don't absorb panic. They slow it down. You have a choice. You can react to chaos or you can become the reference point it orbits. That's the key. Most people panic together. One person reacts. Another escalates. Soon the room is loud, rushed, emotional. Nothing intelligent happens in that state. But when one person remains calm, truly calm, the system changes. Breathing slows. Voices drop. Decisions sharpen. Not because of authority, because of presence. Say it clearly. I am the calm in the room. Again. I am the calm in the room. Calm is not silence alone. It's regulation. It's the absence of urgency. The absence of emotional contagion. The absence of internal noise. And people feel it instantly. When others panic, they look for signals. They scan faces. They listen to tone. They sense stability or the lack of it. If you are steady, they orient to you. That's leadership. Not positional. Not verbal. Energetic. You don't need their permission to be steady. Most people think leadership requires action first. It doesn't. It requires containment first. Containment of emotion. Containment of fear. Containment of impulse. Once contained, action becomes precise. Calm minds choose better moves. That's the key. This is why emotionally reactive people never lead well. They amplify chaos instead of absorbing it. They rush decisions. They escalate tension. They confuse motion with progress. Strong minds do the opposite. They slow the room. Slowing the room creates clarity. Clarity creates trust. Trust creates influence. Influence is quiet power. Say it again. I am the calm in the room. Becoming the calm reference point means something important. You stop matching energy. You stop mirroring stress. You stop sinking to anxiety. You stop riding emotional waves. You hold your own frequency. That frequency becomes the anchor. This doesn't mean you withdraw. It means you stabilize. Stability doesn't flinch. When something goes wrong, you don't react first. You observe. When people argue, you don't jump in. You let it settle. When urgency is demanded, you slow the pace. Slowing the pace feels uncomfortable to others because they're used to reacting. But reaction is not leadership. Regulation is. You have a choice. You can add to noise, or you can become gravity. Gravity doesn't speak. It pulls. Strong presence pulls the room into order. That's the key. This is not a personality trait. It's a trained state. You trained it through every chapter before this. You stopped explaining. You learned silence. You detached from being understood. You controlled your expression. You built consistency. You became unreadable. You stopped performing. You withdrew from noise. You replaced motivation with discipline. All of that was preparation. This chapter is integration. Calm becomes your default, not something you access, something you live in. When calm is internal, it becomes external automatically. You don't try to lead. People follow stability instinctively because humans seek regulation when under stress. They move toward whoever has it. Say it again. I am the calm in the room. This also changes how life treats you. Opportunities come to those who don't rush them. Responsibility comes to those who can hold pressure. Trust goes to those who don't break under stress. You don't chase leadership. You embody it. Here's the discipline. When chaos appears, do less. Not more. Lower your voice. Reduce movement. Shorten words. Stillness under chaos feels unnatural to the untrained. To you, it becomes familiar. That familiarity is power. Because while others escalate, you stabilize. And stabilization wins. Every time. You don't need their permission to be steady. This is the final identity shift. You are no longer managing yourself. You are governing yourself. Governed minds don't negotiate with emotion. They don't react to noise. They don't perform strength. They are strength. Quiet. Consistent. Unmoved. Say it one last time. I am the calm in the room. This is what it means to be mentally strong without saying a word. Your presence speaks first. Your restraint speaks louder. Your consistency speaks longest. You don't announce power. You don't explain discipline. You don't demand respect. You create gravity. And gravity needs no explanation. This is where the book ends. But this is where your standard begins. Mental strength is not announced. It's not explained. It's not debated. It's built quietly through discipline, restraint, and self-command. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to react. You don't need to speak to be felt. From this moment forward, let your silence be intentional. Let your actions be consistent. Let your presence speak before your mouth ever does. Here is your challenge. For the next 7 days, say less, react slower, and act with precision. No explanations. No emotional leakage. No performance. Because when you stop talking and start governing yourself, the world listens.